All right, this is my new boat. It is a Pintail Pirogue 12 foot. Instead of having the narrow front and back on this, I had him put a full wide transom on the back so that I can run a mud motor. Uh, this is a bed extension that I built, has a linear actuator that controls it, helps lift and lower, just because I want to be able to load this like it's a trailer, but use the back of my pickup truck so I don't have to store a trailer. All I do is I back up to the water's edge with my tailgate down like this. The camera points straight down at the ground, so it's really easy to see where the water line is. I can see the bottom of this hitch. I'll go ahead and stop that instead of going all the way down. I can see the bottom of the hitch and slightly behind it, so I'll just back out over the water just a 6-8 inches. That puts the back of the boat, typically with a normal ramp slope, that puts the back of the boat at this level already, touching water, possibly depending on the steepness. The back may already be floating. So if the back's already floating, this would have slid off and into the water. I just run a bow line off the hook up front so that I can catch it and then pull it over to the side. Putting it back on is the same thing in reverse. Bow goes on the back of the bunks. I hop up in the boat or the back of the pickup truck, grab front handle or rope, typically because the bow's too far back, and I just pull it up high enough that I can start the lift. And as it comes up and the weight gets more flat, I just shift it the rest of the way forward into the truck. These blue straps right here I'll put on right at the end to make sure that it can't slide backwards off the bed lift. And then I've got some tie downs that I installed on every bolt in my truck bed. And I'll just do an X pattern of a ratchet strap across the bow to hold it into the truck itself, so that if anything happens to this lift, I'm not just relying on these two little straps. It will be essentially like tied straight down into the bed with that X pattern. The next problem I needed to solve was storage for the boat and for that bed extension. I've had it in the garage for about a month, and my solution was not very good. I'd back as far in as I could, and then I'd lower the back on a ice chest with some foam on top, and then I'd slowly drive out from underneath the boat, and right before I got to the end of the boat on the back of the bunks, I would put the same thing up front and set it down on it and drive out from underneath it. But that still left me having to store this bed extension, and that is a little over 8 feet long. So in a garage that another car is being parked in, and I have the whole sidewall over here filled up, that left us with basically no space. You couldn't get in the passenger side doors, you couldn't get into the freezer, you had to pick one or the other, and getting around was pretty difficult with all that stuff at your feet. So I came up with this cart. This side lifts because I need it to go under the tailgate all the way to the bumper to get the center of gravity well placed inside these wheels so that I'm not toppy or tipsy. I don't want to be rolling this thing around and the whole thing come falling over on me. So that has to be low enough to make it under this tailgate. And it is, but then it also ends up lifting to take the weight as it starts rolling away from the truck. So what I do is, in this position, I lower the bed lift, and I'll get it right down close to where it catches weight-wise on here, and just try to keep it as far back as possible and stop it right there. And then it's still a bit finicky. I'm probably going to cut camera, and it's going to take me probably 5 or so minutes to get the tension right on that hitch with the bed lift or the truck lift, so that I can just pull the pin and slide backwards out of the receiver. If you have too much downward pressure, it pins that hitch. If you have too much upward pressure, it does the same thing, and you can't even pull the pin. So I'll get that set up real quick, slide it back just far enough to show you the next thing. All right, so I got the pin pulled and slid it back, and the bunk right here is holding weight, and then the back of the cart is also holding weight. So I've got this pulled back far enough that I can lift this side without damaging the back of the tailgate. So all I do is I hit the up button here, and I'll just guide this in a little to make sure it's centered as well as I can get it centered. And that'll end up taking the weight off of the truck, and it'll allow me to pull back the cart. And you can hear it engage with that weight. And all right, so now that I've gotten that lifted all the way to the top, all I have to do is disengage the brake down here and roll it away from the truck and lock it in place. And then I'll just pull the truck forward out of the way, and I'll be right back. All right, so now the truck is backed away. The cart is doing all of the weight storage on its own. It's still in the elevated position. So from this location, all I would do is move it far enough to the side and far enough forward that it's kind of out of the way of the car when my wife pulls in, and as close to the front of the garage door as possible. And then I just lower it back down. And this is the storage location. It's 4-wheel casters all around. There's no solid casters, so I can move it sideways. I can spin it in 360. It does take 2 wheels locked to really make it stationary. It will pivot around a locked wheel. But this is a good height for loading in and out of stuff. I have a 230 amp hour battery in here right now because all I'm running it on right now is a trolling motor. I've got a hunting backpack, my saddle, I've got some gear kit, some tools in the back from when I was still working on the cart. So it rolls really easily. I don't have a perfectly flat garage floor. It does slope back. So if I get a little bit wonky, the frame is so rigid and square that a single wheel may lift. So I do get some tip as I get close to this edge if only one wheel goes into the drop off. But it's not enough. I've had the full thing shift onto that wheel. It's only like a 1/4 inch. So I haven't had any issues with it even acting like it's gonna come off. But the whole thing is movable. So I can tuck it way close to the freezers if I need to, and then just turn around. And if I need to get into the freezers, I can pull it backwards and get as close to the car as possible. So I'm pretty pleased with it. It's gonna take a little bit of getting used to. The first time I did it, I did accidentally lift the cart with it pushed all the way underneath the tailgate. Luckily, there's basically no damage. Little bitty dimple, but nothing bigger than anything that's already back there. So I'm gonna have to be pretty conscious of not carrying this when I'm pulling or tugging on something so that I don't accidentally activate a button. And then luckily the buttons are different. The cart has an up, down only, and the bed has an up, down, and stop. So that should make it easy to keep them separated. My plans are to eventually get a mud motor on this. I'm not gonna do one of the big, long ones. I'm looking at PPF wood duck, which I think is only like a 60-inch tail and only like 85 inches total overall. And they have a quick mount that's just a single pull pin and it lifts off the bracket. And I would just get a second bracket mount on the front of this seat. And instead of just turning the motor backwards and having the whole engine and handle stick out the back, I would turn it around backwards and then I'd lift and move forward, not on this side because this is here, but I'd just lift and move forward and set it into that second mount and then put the safety pin through. And then the entire motor handle and everything will be within the size of the boat itself. And that shifts my center of gravity kind of right here on the front of this seat for the whole boat, which leaves the center of gravity better for the cart. But yeah, that's my recent project. Just like normal, I OCD'd a little too much and went a little overboard, but it looks like it's going to be a pretty easy load and unload and solve my storage solutions in the garage too.